Hello and welcome to this week's episode of your Power Packed Podlets. My name is Rachel and I'm your host for these mini magical journeys together. And as I was pondering on what I was going to bring to you today for this episode, I was sat out in my garden with the sun on the back of my neck. And it was that delicious sensation when you haven't felt the sun in some time. And it's that feeling of coming back to life, of your bones warming up again. And I was thinking of coming in and sharing a little bit about this with you, and I had a giggle to myself because if like me, you're British, or if you live in a colder climate in a country that generally has colder weather, then for you talking about the weather is a totally common and normal topic of conversation. But if you've been, so I live in the south of Spain. So if you have lived all of your life in a warmer climate, you're like, what is it with the Brits talking about the weather all of the time? Don't worry, that is not what today's episode is about. I had that little giggle. I was like, I'm gonna share that anecdote with you. So let's dive into today's subject. Now, if you're in my WhatsApp group and you listen to the last audio I dropped, you will already know what today's episode is about. And what I'm sharing today, what I'm bringing to the table today, is a different take on the same subject. And so it's going to land for you in a whole new way. Now, after listening to today, if you then think, well, you know what, Rachel, I want to hear more about this because this sounds amazing. I also want to hear different takes on it. So, because it's one of these ideas that requires you to consider it, because it's taking something non-tangible and describing it with words, so it's like an inner experience. It's a deep inner experience. It's how you understand yourself, how you understand reality, how you create the things external to yourself. And so we're discussing like a non-tangible experience in words. And so, like the Buddhist will say this, it's how do you describe enlightenment through words? Because words cannot describe something so profound. But it's the same with all of the inner work. Words they only make sense through experience. And so my invitation is when you hear, and it's probably something you've heard before, and today it's going to land for you in a whole new way, go out into life and practice this and contemplate it and meditate upon these ideas as you go about your life, especially when you encounter fear, resistance, anxiety, overwhelm, lack, scarcity. And see if you can just a little bit shift, just a little bit, and begin to understand this concept that we're talking about today through the lens of your own personal experience, because it is only then that we can truly understand something, especially a subject like this one. So you're probably thinking, Rachel, come on, get on with it. Tell us what it's about. So this audio I dropped in the WhatsApp group, the title of it was the following: How to go from the experience of time scarcity to time abundance, of financial scarcity to financial abundance, from fear to inner safety. So how do we actually not just shift what we're creating, how do we actually shift our frequency? And I know that lots of you listening to this, you've got a curious mind. You love contemplation. In fact, probably from a very young age, you questioned the things that people told you. You would see everybody else going out and doing things certain ways, and you'd be like, well, what if I don't want to do it that way? What if I want to do it differently? In fact, probably from a very young age, you felt different. If you're in this space and you're called to these specific podlets, you've probably felt different from the majority, from the masses, from quite a young age. And you're very creative in your way of thinking. You're really good at creating your own ideas and artistic works. And so I'm inviting you, when it comes to, let's use a very generic word that's thrown around a lot right now, right? Manifestation. But when it comes to conscious creation, let's shift the wording a little bit because language is so powerful. When it comes to you being a conscious creator, because we're always creating, right? Most of the time it's unconsciously. So let's talk about manifestation in those terms. It's you consciously manifesting, i.e. being a conscious creator of what is both internal and external to you. And so I invite you to apply what you're already a genius at to these practices. Because most of you here, you've been on this path of self-inquiry, of doing different things, of like somatic practices and meditation practices and mindset. You've been on this path for some time. You already have so much wisdom and knowledge and experience. And now it's about channeling that into the areas that you're feeling stuck, or you're feeling you're not getting what you want, or you're feeling I've tried so much and I'm not getting the results that I'd expected. Now channel what you already know into that. And this is how you're going to do it. You've questioned other people, how they think, society, how society thinks. How often do you question your thoughts? How often do you contemplate whether or not your thoughts are ones that you choose to believe or you choose to disregard? Because if you've had a meditation practice for some time, you will know this. We think a lot, and there are thoughts that we repeat. They're on repeat. They're like, dang, dang, again, there's that thought again, there's that thought again. And we will think the same thing so many times. And when you sit in meditative contemplation and you slow down, you'll notice this. Any of you who've done a Vipassana at the beginning, maybe you realize if you go straight from like life into Vipassana, those first few days, it's about slowing down the speed of your thoughts because they're incessant. And then gradually they slow down and you have fewer thoughts. And then there's gaps between the thoughts. And then there's pauses of silence. And it can take time because we've trained the mind to think incessantly. And the majority of that thinking, it's programs and patterns. And so when you're desiring to create a new result, let's focus on financial to begin with, right? Because this is a big deal. Maybe you don't like to talk about money, right? This was the case for me. And until I got comfortable contemplating, looking at my belief systems, talking about money and healing my relationship with money, I was constantly struggling with it. Even though I've always been very good at what I do and very good at having a waiting list of clients, I was still struggling financially because I wasn't choosing to be with my beliefs around money. So let's talk about that. And you can translate this into whatever arena you're wanting to focus on. It doesn't have to be money. It can be your body. It can be love. It can be your business. I know I've forgotten many things. Fill in the blank. How much do you believe your thoughts? How much do you actually consider what you think around finances? Because if you're wanting to create a different result, you have to begin first by thinking different thoughts. You cannot think the same thoughts you've thought up until this point and create a different outcome. If you've been with me to any of my free events before, you've probably heard me, because this is an analogy I repeat a lot because it's a silly one and it'll make you giggle, and it makes us realize how crazy it is for us to expect to get a different result by doing the same things and thinking the same thoughts. Imagine that every single time you go to a house party, you always make your famous cheesecake. And you know exactly how to make the cheesecake. And then you're going to a new house party, and it turns out everybody there is vegan, and you're like, you know what, I want to make a different dessert. I'm going to make something different. And you decide to make an apple tart. And so you go to the shop and you buy all of the ingredients to make a dessert. You get home, you put all of the ingredients together, and then when you've put it into the pan, you realized, oh, I bought the ingredients for a cheesecake. But you think, you know what, it's going to be fine. I've been focusing on wanting an apple pie for a really long time. I've been desiring the apple pie. I've been visualizing the apple pie. I've been looking at recipes to make an apple pie. So I'll just put the cheesecake in the oven and expect for an apple pie to come out. Now, I know when described in these terms, you're like, well, that makes no sense. Rachel, that's a stupid analogy. But it is really to highlight how, when we're moving to a different desired outcome, we expect to carry the same thoughts, identities, beliefs, paradigms, and nervous system responses with us and create a different result. Think of these 5 things like the ingredients for the recipe. So when you put that cake, dessert, pizza, pie, whatever it is, in the oven, unless you are working with different ingredients, do not expect for something else to come out of that oven. It is not how it works. Just as like the recipe ingredients for something you're making food-wise, it is exactly the same when it comes to conscious creation. You have to change the ingredients to create a different outcome. Your identity must shift. Your beliefs, your paradigms, your nervous system responses, and your thoughts. These are all intertwined. And these ingredients must change for the recipe to be different, for the outcome to be different. So now you're like, okay, Rachel, simplify this for me. Tell me exactly what to do. Because this isn't a process that you sit down one day and you listen to one audio, you go to one event, you attend an event that's 5 days, and then suddenly everything has changed and all of the ingredients have changed. Why? Because you've held an identity, you've held beliefs, thoughts, paradigms, and nervous system patterns, responses to reality. You've held them for so long, they don't change overnight. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about this, the difference between an intensive. So you go on a retreat, you come to one of my live events, you take a short course. Think of that as an intensive. An intensive is great because it shifts your frequency. It gets you into a different state. So you are ready, you are prepped, and you can have profound aha moments in an intensive. But does that mean that you continue to have the changes happen afterwards? No, because how the motivational cycle of the human being functions is once you've finished that intensive, there will be a period of time you're on it, you're like, yes, boom, bam, bosh. And then your patterns will come back in. When the motivation begins to dip and the patterns that have been there for so long come back to the surface, that's when the real profound change can happen if you continue to show up and lean in. To do the work, to audit your thoughts, to shift the nervous system programs, to understand what is actually going on underneath the surface level, because anxiety, overwhelm, frustration, loneliness, sadness, burnout, all of this is data, it is information. It is bringing your attention to something which, when you know how to interpret what that is and see beneath the surface level, not the surface level thoughts and fears, what is actually underneath. When you are in a space that helps you, that serves for you to see what you alone cannot see, to be the mirror for you to see the back of your head and the underside of your butt. You need a mirror for that. And it's so hard within the own 4 walls of your mind to be able to see what you cannot see, to expand beyond what you currently know. It requires that you be in spaces just like in an intensive, just like in a retreat, that you be in a space that it, like the beat of a drum, that safety of the longevity of a container that exposes you to new ways of thinking. Choose this thought form. Look at this thing you're thinking that's not serving you. Oh, aha moment. I hadn't realized I'd been thinking that thing about money. I thought that money is bad, money is wrong. Only people who are bankers can make a lot of money, whatever the thought may be. And then suddenly you have this mini awakening. I hadn't realized I'd been thinking that. So what's another thought I can choose? And then being in a space that invites you and shows you and models to you new thought forms you can choose for yourself, and you go, I'll have that one. I choose that thought. Thank you. Because if your current environment isn't consistently and continually highlighting for you where you are thinking and feeling and being in lack, fear, and scarcity, and then showing you new ways of thinking, feeling, and being consistently, not once, not twice, on a regular basis, it's really challenging to do this on your own. You only know what you know. And there is so much you don't know yet. There is so much you've not yet seen, you've not yet felt, you've not yet explored. And that's really effing exciting. I know you love learning. It's like a natural hunger in you, that curiosity of what are the things that, because society, right, the masses following along like sheeple, and this isn't to label it as bad, but you know that you're not here for that. You are not here to be a sheeple, to follow, to believe something just because you're told it. You've never done that. And so why do you do it with your thoughts? Why do you do it with your emotions? Why do you do it with your feelings? Feelings do not necessarily tell you the truth. They tell you the surface level belief that is protecting you, or it believes that it is. So when are you going to step into an environment that teaches you what your emotions, your feelings, what they actually are? Not in an intensive, on a regular basis. Because that next level you're ready for, the thoughts, the version of you that has what you want is required to think. The feelings, the nervous system programs, you don't know what they are yet. What are you going to do to expose yourself to those things so you can learn them and choose them for yourself again and again and again? Because this is what happens between intensives. I love intensives. I love going to like in-person intensives, going all in. But then what makes the difference is the in-between. Just like an ayahuasca ceremony, it's the integration afterwards. That's what makes the difference. That's what creates the change. So it's about being in that environment that holds a standard that you have to calibrate up to. A standard of a natural abundance, of thinking at another level, the level of what you desire, of being at another level. So you can see what that is, how people at that level move, how they think, and be able to take them off a pedestal. Because if you are wanting to 10x your income or create financial freedom that allows you to take holidays and not worry about the money that's coming in, to be able to travel with your loved ones and then come back and not be stressed and anxious and overwhelmed all of the time, to be able to take 2-3 days off per week and not be running your business all of the time, whatever abundance is for you. If that's what you want, there's a calibration up that's required. And maybe you see people who are doing this and you're putting them on a pedestal. You think that they have something that you don't. They know something you don't. They are something you're not. Because what you're not seeing and what you're not hearing and what you're not feeling is all of the challenges they go through. How they lead themselves through failure, how they lead themselves through doubt, through anxiety, through loneliness, through the tears, through the ups and the downs, how they pick themselves up again, what they do when they've sabotaged themselves. Because what we see is the surface of the brilliance or the success. What you don't see, that is actually what makes the difference. And so for those of you who you've never been in a container like the School of Holistic Success before, maybe you're beginning to get an idea of what it's truly about. Yes, we talk about strategy, but it's also about you being in an environment that exposes you and helps you to calibrate up. It is then your choice. In the school, I hold a standard of integrity with self, of integrity with others, of how I lead myself through fear, how I choose courage again and again, even when I don't want to. And I do the hard things. So you get to see firsthand what it really takes to get what you want. Not the shiny stuff, not the, oh, look at me, I've done this thing and isn't it amazing? No, the real stuff. And also the simplest of things, because sometimes it is so easy to believe that it's complex. It's so complicated to get what I want. It is not complicated. It's not complicated. It's not far off. It's so much closer than you can possibly realize. If you have held in your mind the thing that you desire, it is so much closer to you than you can possibly imagine. It is up to you to learn what it is to close that gap, to become the person who allows the thing that you want, that no longer resists it, in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your identity, in your paradigms, in your automated nervous system responses. This process is a gradual releasing of what no longer serves you. It's the releasing from the nervous system, the traumatic responses to life. It is releasing from the thoughts and the feelings, the perception of limitation, and realizing that you're an infinite being. And it is when you walk the path, I teach it through business. If you're not in business, then look for spaces that teach it through another lens, relationship with body or love or whatever it may be. I teach this path of awakening to limitless potential through the lens of business. That your business be the visualizing point that keeps you anchored to doing the processes and the healing and all of the things to get the results you want. Some of it is strategy, obviously. It's the same with anything. And let me leave you with this thought. Because when something is not going the way you would like it to go in your life, it is the gift that is giving you the opportunity and the drive to go within you and to clear and heal and acknowledge the things that are programmed into the human, into the avatar, that are getting in the way of you having what you want. Without the challenge, the desire could not be birthed. For you to be holding that duality, the duality of what you don't want and what you do want at the same time, and actually have a necessity to make an effort for anything, to learn anything new, to grow in any way. So although the challenge may not always feel that great, the challenge presents an opportunity. It presents desire. It presents a path for you to choose, a new timeline for you to choose. If you like these sorts of conversations, you like to dive deep, not just into becoming successful, but understanding the spiritual path of success. How can you not only increase your success, how can you also go deeper down that rabbit hole of understanding the universe and quantum physics and the human experience and yourself? The mind, the body, the soul, the yin, the yang, the dark, the light, the joy, the shadows. And this is the path. And this is what I mean by holistic success. That it not just be a number in your account, that it also be the spiritual path that you have chosen to take in human form. To come back to the point of origin, to remember what you are, and experience it as though for the first time. That is the human experience. We forget. We forget that we're limitless. We forget the pure joy. We forget that we are abundance. We forget that we are time. We forget that we are one. we forget that we are love. And we go through the challenges that life as human presents us, so as to have the opportunity, through how we show up, through how we do the work, to come back to the point of origin, to come back. You will have experienced these glimpses of pure bliss, of pure joy, pure happiness. It's coming back to the point of origin and experiencing it as though for the first time. So if you enjoy these types of conversations, and this is how you wish to move on your path to financial and business success, then you're going to love the school. We go deep. We go deep, we go wide. And we study in a safe environment. So if that's for you, I invite you to reach out. It's a beautiful space to be. It's in a beautiful community to be in. I'm going to sign off for today. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And I will connect with you again next week for another episode of your Power Packed Podlets.